Thank you so much for joining me for a Living Brand podcast, where I am your host, Felicia Shakespeare. And here we showcase exceptional career success stories through personal brand journeys from entrepreneurs, entertainment, tech, media, and more. We also provide motivation, mastery, and real stories from real people on how to overcome your fears and live a life of unlimited possibilities. So, what I would like to say as I get started is my guest today truly embodies the aspect of living a life of unlimited possibilities. I want to share a little bit about her. Today, my guest is Desirée Rogers. Desirée is an American corporate executive, a former White House social secretary for President Obama's office, and a former chief executive officer of Johnson Publishing Company. And if you have not heard of Johnson Publishing Company, it is where we have the historic housing of the Ebony and Jet magazines right in the Chicago area. So I want to also talk about the fact that, and we will have her share more, but Desirée is currently the CEO of the Fashion Fair brand. So without any further ado, I want to bring her on. Desirée, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I am so happy to be here and talk with you. So I know we've been trying to get this together, and here we are.
Yes, timing is everything, and now is the time. And it was such a great opportunity to meet you. It's been almost a year now. I can't believe it.
I know
But our
time
dear,
flies.
it really does. And that was the event for Grit and Grace. And you had the opportunity to make over all the women that day. And what I loved about it is you were right there. We were doing a photo shoot with our dear friend Cheryl, and you were right there watching over the product, making sure everyone was intact. And I'm just like, wow. And even the night before, I believe there was a special fireside chat. And that's when I had a chance to see you. But it was great to actually meet you and make the connection. So thank you so much again for accepting this wonderful opportunity to share your story.
Yes.
So I want to start with, you've done so much to change lives and specifically be a role model for women around the US and around the world with your different leadership positions. What would you say is, I don't, why don't we just say, how did you start your journey to purpose? Because I think purpose is an evolution, and I think you've had an evolution. How did it all get started for you?
Well, I think early on, my grandmother and my mother were both entrepreneurs, and they had daycare centers, and so I saw them working side by side most of my, childhood. And so they had purpose. Their purpose was to make it easier for working women in our neighborhood to not have to worry about their children while they were at work. And so one of the things I knew pretty early on is that without purpose, without really understanding why you're doing something or why you want to do something or really standing behind what you're doing, you're probably not going to do it as well. And you're probably going
Right.
to not like what it is that you're doing. And so for me, I've always wanted to run something. I didn't quite know what that was until much, much later, but I always was preparing myself to be able to run something that benefited, our society, and in particular, Black men and women.
So what would you say has been the number one reason why you wanted to enter into entrepreneurship at this time? Because I feel, even your journey as a CEO of some of the most major organizations in this country, in addition to serving at the White House, I know all of that prepared you. So how did all of that, number one, prepare you to become a CEO of your own? And then what was it that allowed you to make that a priority of importance in
Right.
your
So I
next
don't think
steps?
anything can quite prepare you. I mean, you're going to have to take a risk and a chance at some point.
Okay.
And so I think that, it's really hard to say, "Oh, I was perfectly prepared to take on this challenge." And so sometimes we think like we've got to have this and this. Sometimes you just have to jump forward and jump into it. And so a couple of things. When I came out of the White House, I was inspired to come back to work, a position, whatever you want to, a profession that had some value to my community. So it was the first time that really I was thinking, that way. I always worked in these big corporations that we're certainly doing good work, but I thought, boy, wouldn't it be great to do something in my own community using the skills that I had developed over my career to really create wealth in my own community. And so when I went to Johnson Publishing, I was thrown into media and cosmetics, and I really fell in love with cosmetics. Why? Because I felt that still women are thinking about, how do I look? I don't want to wear this, or should I wear that, or all of these things. And I had all these conversations at the counter, mostly with Black women, about how they felt about themselves externally. But we know that as you think about your external look, it certainly has a huge impact on internally how you feel. And some people say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy in the house. And we know that it is just important that we feel good about ourselves. That could be one mascara or lipstick. It could be just a simple powder or skincare products. It's different for everybody. But I thought that maybe there was a chance that I could enter that market and create some value. And I also knew that it was a $60 billion industry, of which Black Americans spend, a little less than 7 billion, and that we weren't getting our fair share of revenues to then turn back into cash into our own communities. Because we all know that if we put cash into our communities, that money comes back to us, whether it be internships or jobs that we're offering, our partners that we hire, our legal firm, our accounting firms, that we typically are going to maybe hire more Black than maybe is traditional, and some of the businesses that may not be Black owned. And so I really felt that given the amount of money we spend, it would be great to talk about, create a space where people could spend their money with more Black owned firms. And it doesn't always have to be my company, but I think it's
Right.
important that we do spend more money with Black owned companies. And we push, in my case, retailers to carry more Black owned companies.
Wow, and what a company, that you're heading, the Fashion Fair brand, of course, founded initially by Eunice Johnson, and I think it's like at its 49th year, if I read it correctly.
50th year this year. Can
50th
you believe
year,
it?
and this
It's
is
going to
50,
be our
we're
50th
50,
year. Yeah,
right? 50
I can't
years.
think of a cosmetics brand that's been around for 50 years,
Wow.
particularly one that's been Black owned all of its existence. And so one of the things we looked at, and people say, oh, that was my grandmother's brand or my mother's brand. 50 years is a long time to be in the marketplace, but we've reintroduced it with all vegan products, all natural products. And I'm just encouraging everyone to give it a shot, give it a chance. It is not the makeup that it once was. It's even better.
And I think of that because you've taken on, like you said, 50 years later, that's first of all an amazing in and of itself to have that. And even five represents grace, right? This is a year of Jubilee, really,
Yeah,
for the
right,
brand.
right,
That's what 50 represents, Jubilee. But
right.
ultimately, just the fact that, you would take on this at this time, tell us, even beyond the community part, you know, to reignite, for lack of a better term, because I see it as a whole new look. When I got the packaging, and of course being there with the people last year this time, I just felt re-inspired because I was that person. I was always going to fashion fair to the counter,
Mhm.
and primarily at Carson's to find the right the right lipstick color, the right foundation color. It
Well,
has
now you
been
have
a
to go to
mainstay.
Sephora. You have to go to
Now I gotta
Sephora
go
now.
Sephora. Exactly.
Yes, yes.
I've done that. So just let us, just tell us, what is it? Why was it so critical for you to want
Sure.
to help this brand continue to succeed? Why did you acquire it? What made it? What was it that really made you make that step? Because that was truly a leap and a jump.
Well, I think so many times we're all so busy in our lives. We have families, we have jobs, we have hobbies, we have our church, we have things that we're interested in. And I think it's so important that we protect our history. And Cheryl, my business partner, and I bought this company out of bankruptcy. And we felt that it was important for the company to still be in Black hands and to be two Black women that grew up with the brand. We thought that we could give it a shot, as humbled as we are by the legacy of this brand, that we would do our very best to bring it back to its luster that it once had. I mean, everyone, for the most part, Black women can tell a story of a certain age, can tell a story of how fashion fair impacted their lives, whether it was what they wore to prom or the first lip gloss their mom allowed them to wear, the first foundation, the first time they were colored matched, the first time they saw Black people behind the counters that were able to counsel them on hyperpigmentation or the fading of spots or oily skin. You know, we have to preserve our history. And so I think of this as a preservation of history, an investment in Black America. I mean, when you think about it, there's so many brands out there: Chanel, Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, even
Absolutely.
Gucci. We don't say, oh, that's old, my grandmother wore that.
No, we
We
don't.
are running to embrace these new brands, and they've been redone, and Fashion Fair has been redone. And so we're just asking that, not only Black Americans, but Americans support this iconic American brand that we believe should be here far into the future, generating wealth for our community and investing back into our community. So over 90% of our employees are Black. So we just started the Fashion Fair Spelman Scholarship. And so we're going to continue to build the brand, not only have people look beautiful, but also invest in the community. And I really think that's what drives us every day as we do this work. And so we're asking everyone to come out, take a look at the brand, and think about what's in your bag. We should at least, my pledge or what I'm committing to is at least 15% Black owned products in my cosmetics bag.
Absolutely. And I love that segue because we really have to be intentional about our dollars. I always
Yeah.
say all money is
And we're not
green,
always. We're not
and we're not.
always. And we think we don't matter, that it doesn't matter, but it really does matter. And, across the board, we're talking cosmetics today, but we really do have to be intentional about our dollars, how and where we spend them, and realize that that money, can or cannot be reinvested in people that look like us. And that money is power. It really is.
Absolutely. And you just made me think of even just a local community, how many times you have your mom and pop restaurants, right? You have your mom and pop local
Support. We have
stores.
to support.
It's and it's a no-brainer in these communities that you're going to go there on Saturday, they're going to be filled up because people know if I can support this business is going to thrive here. It's not going anywhere. And you have places like, Rainbow Cones, who's been in Chicago land probably over almost 100 years, and many other brands, like you said, across the board. But it's so important that we be intentional about what's happening now, because at the end of the day, um, there is a legacy here. There is a firm legacy. The Ebony
Yeah.
the Ebony, the
Yeah.
Johnson & Johnson legacy, the Ebony, the Jet. We were
That's
all
exactly
recipients.
right.
Go right
And
ahead.
so legacy is one piece of this, and our history is another piece of this. But also, it's just our own power, and also supporting a company where the products are made for us. There's
Right.
all this conversation about diversity, which I think is extremely important, and there's no reason why we can't expand and have a diverse clientele. At the same time, our testing is done with people that look like us. We have a Black dermatologist that has worked on the products. We've worked on the undertones of the products, and so I would say that these products perform better than many of the products that are out there when you look at Black owned businesses and what they've put into creating these products.
So, what would you say are the critical steps that are necessary to succeed in business? I think, as you said before, many times, and I had a conference back in 2018 because I felt like so many women, back to being women. And of course, this is going to be out in Women's History Month, by the way, so we're going to really shout it out. It's perfect. But as far as women, a lot of times we don't feel we can, like you said, there's like a struggle with the how, not the how do you go about it. Many times we know what people did, but we don't know how. So, what would you say are some critical, maybe two or three things that jewels that you could drop for women and people in general of color to understand how they can succeed in business in the climate that we're in right now? Because you're living it out loud right now.
I think the first thing is, whatever your concept is or your business is, be sure that it's not just your love, but that you have an audience, you have consumers. So many times people say, "Oh, I love making necklaces." Well, that's great, but will people buy them? And will they buy them, and at what price? And so you have to have that realistic conversation of whether or not there is a market for the service or the product that you're selling. So that's number one. If you don't have that, then chances are you're not going to be successful, no matter how passionate you are about that business. And so the other thing would be, get your homework done. And so, volunteer and work with someone that maybe is doing something similar. You don't have to know everything yourself, and so part is your training, and understanding what you do and don't know. And the other is understanding where you can go to someone that can help you to, understand the things you don't know, right? And don't be afraid to ask for those things. So many people think, well, I'm going to appear not so smart, or I should know this, or you're never going to know everything. And there's going to be a
So
surprises
true.
along the way. And so you need your kind of your kitchen cabinet to help you with those things and to hold your hand through those parts that can be more difficult. And you really can't give up. You have to have that faith in yourself and your ability to succeed. And then they're just fundamentals, fundamentals in all the legal terms. People think, oh, I'm just starting a little tiny thing. Well, if it has a name, you want to make certain that you've registered that name so that you can use that name fully, and that no one else can use that name. And so there's
Right.
certain legal steps that we jump over and we say, oh, forget it. I don't need that. I don't have the money for that. I'm not going to register the name. I'm not, my partner and I are just going to work together. We're not going to have a contract. No, 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 no. You have to have, even if it's one
Oh,
page that says, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. Because the
absolutely.
best of friends can fall out because I thought I was doing this. You said you were going to do that. You were going to give some, all. You don't want any of that to disrupt you from the work that you're doing. So legal consultation, even if it's your brother-in-law, your brother-in-law's friend, get someone to walk you through the legal issues that are important to consider as you're starting a business. Equally important is your accountant.
Mm,
So money is always important. And so just making certain that you've got what you need to have in place, even if it's a tiny business, you want to make certain that you're paying the taxes on that and you understand the taxes
oh,
around that. You want to make certain that you have a bank account, that you're able to track your accounts payable and your accounts receivable, what money you have coming in, what money you have coming out, so that you can make certain that your business is successful and that you are able to manage that success, and the goals that you have for the business. It doesn't matter how small it is. So none of this is easy, but I guarantee you, if you do these things on the front end, before you start, it will keep that gray hair away. And
wow.
it will also keep that angst, that nervousness, that, oh my God, how do I think about this? My partner did this and she was supposed to do that, or he was supposed to do that. So you got to think through those things. Those would be kind of my three things that I think are so important if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. And you're never going to know everything. You are going to have failures, and so you just have to keep moving and believe in the work that you're doing. And you have to ask for the sale, just like I'm asking for the sale. I'm asking everybody to go to Sephora and get something. Give us something. Lipstick, lip teaser, powder, foundation. Give it a chance. And so you got to ask for the sale as well.
I love it. And you did not hesitate to ask. You were making sure those
I
cars were
can't.
going
I
through
can't
last year.
hesitate.
You're like,
I can't.
okay, did you now you got your receipts? It was so
People, a
good.
lot of us say we're going to do stuff and then we don't do it. And
That's
I'm
true.
one of those, it happens to me too, but I really am in 2023, just like here I am appearing here, trying to make an effort to follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do. It may not be exactly the timing that somebody would want, but I am trying to make it happen and be able to check off that list and say that
Right.
I am a person that is following up on the things that I say I'm going to do.
I appreciate that. And that is really integrity. That's, and those are things that are so invaluable, that again, people just sometimes put to the side. And you just dropped so many gems. I wanted to just say amen on the part,
Amen, honey. We can do
particularly.
this.
We can
Black
say
people can
amen.
do this.
We're
We
right.
can.
But the part you said, like you said, you can't negate the legalities, of registering your trademark. And I even have a live example of myself going into business with my brother. You want to salvage those relationships and not have any interference down the road, whether it's your brother, your friend. So, because many
Especially if it's your
relationships,
brother and your friend.
especially if it's your brother. And I learned a lot, through that process, like you said, and just because we are siblings or family members or even friends or colleagues, we are all different human beings in the way we process. And as you stated, once you get into the throes of business, especially a new business, in our example, it was a restaurant business. And it was just such, it was the basics were pretty much clear. But again, along the way, there were so many things that came up. But if you have that legal document clear on what the expectations are on each side, no one's confused, and you could always use it as sort of like a middle person or a referee, for lack of a better
Yeah,
term.
for
So that
sure.
was valuable,
No one wants to be confused, and everyone wants to
right?
know what is their role.
Right.
What is my clear role? And as my brother would say, what are you bringing to the table, Desiree? I know
Mhm.
what I got. What are you doing? And let's get that down on paper so that we are all clear about
Right.
what. And it's such a lot of time spent on going back and forth when you don't have that. And even when you
Absolutely.
have that, you got to, get that first year is tough, right? Because people may say, well, I don't want to do that. And you say, well, I really hate doing this. Well, who's going to do it? Well, you got to work through it, or things come up that you just didn't think of. That's all okay. But at least the legal documents give you a framework from which to work. And
Mhm.
it's always a good thing. It's not arguing. It's like, here's what we, agreed on. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely. And even with the pandemic, none of us knew that was coming. As a great example, many of us had to pivot just because of the pandemic. So once again, when you have your roles clear, and when you just once again, communication, you have to communicate and be very, sometimes you have to make changes. If something's not working, why continue down that path? I've seen that many times over. People don't want to make changes or don't want to change, whether it be
Yeah.
business, whether it be a ministry, whether it be
Yeah.
whatever, a
You have to
logo.
be flexible. You have to be flexible
Right.
and you have to admit when you've made a mistake. And so the
Absolutely.
other big piece is, why are we arguing when we know we've made a mistake or it wasn't quite right? I mean, an argument kind of ends when you say you've made a mistake. I mean, what is the other
Absolutely.
person going to say?
Absolutely. Just, oh, it's okay. I
So
got
if you
it.
don't like
You're
to
right.
argue, just own the mistake.
Right.
you know
It's
I
so
try
true.
to tell my daughter, if you make a mistake, you made a mistake. I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Can we like
Absolutely.
get on to the next thing now?
We move forward so
I
much
make at least
quicker.
10 mistakes a day. I'm trying to get that number
Absolutely.
down.
Me too. Me too. There is no perfect person. And I always say this, even as much as we know, like you said, Desiree, someone else. With all of what I have as a background in education, the degrees that I have, I'm not a chemist. I'm not a doctor. There's just things, you are in your lane. So at the end of the day, just like you say, work on being the best version of that, and honing that, and ironing that, and making that as sharp as it can get. But at the same
Right.
time, being willing, right? Being willing to understand, I need help right here. I don't understand this part. So that's the beauty of I'm sure, of your partnership. You have different perspectives as well. As we
Right.
wrap this up, I really appreciate your time today and making time to be here with me today and with us. What's ahead? I know we've talked a lot about the pivot and the things and the vegan options. So what's ahead for you in the business? And also continue to let us know what's the best way to connect and get the products that we want to support.
Sure. So let's take the business part first. How's that?
Okay.
So the best way
Yes.
to connect with us is through select Sephora's, and you can go to fashionfair.com, put your zip code in, and it's going to give you the nearest Sephora to you. And so that's
Okay.
where you actually be able to test and feel and play with the products. Of course, you can also just order on fashionfair.com. We've got some great new products coming forward. The newest are our lip teasers, which is a great, I'm wearing this one today, but these colors, there's 6 colors. They're just coming out into Sephora. So there's a beautiful red and a plum, great, and there's Supreme Brown that was named after our Chief Justice Brown. That is really
Oh,
beautiful
lovely.
color as well. And so I would encourage people to, try it out, test it. It's got sunflower oil, very natural ingredients, feels great on the lips, very moisturizing, non-drying. So that's one thing. I mean, as we look to the future, we've got a lot of new products we're planning for this year. But overall, one of the things that we've started is to spend more time with other owners and founders of Black cosmetics companies to see how we might be able to work together. Only 2.5% of makeup sales are revenues that are going to Black owned and founded companies. And so,
Mm.
one of the things we want to do over the next 5 years is to double that. And we know all the good reasons. That's my lip teaser. We know all the good reasons why. But we think that that number should at least be 5% in revenues coming coming to Black owned and founded companies. And we have to start with our own community and inspiring them to buy from Black owned companies. And so that is something that I think is really important. And we will continue also to grow our relationship with HBCUs in this country, because that is another group of people, young people, that really are going to be the future for Black America. And so we have to make certain that we're investing in them and that we're teaching them, we're providing opportunities for them to ask the questions that they want to ask, to be inspired to generate and have their own businesses, and to learn and have internships and financial backing to get the education that they need to be successful, and to get the whole Black population up to that next level, so that not so
Right.
many of us are suffering the way I see us suffering today, and not having the income or the
Mm.
education or safe places to live, housing, etc., to really be, in a position to have the lives that we all want to lead. And so that's what's in the future for me. So that's what I'm working on. I just happen to be working on it through cosmetics. So that's my
Wow.
entry point, but certainly my dream is to have something much bigger than everyone looking gorgeous, which I know they will if they try Fashion Fair. Um, is to be think beyond that, and to think about how those dollars will be invested back in our community.
I just love the wisdom that you've shared here today, and just the passion that you have. Clearly is coming through. It's not just one, as you said, it's not one dimensional. It's well beyond cosmetics, and I can sense that in just hearing you share all of the pieces that you are involved in the vision that you have for Fashion Fair. Are there any final words of wisdom? I almost hate to let you go,
I
but
mean,
I
I
know
guess
we have to come to an
the
end.
final words or wisdom is live your best life. You have
Right,
the ability to curate the life that you want. And you may not get that in a year, you may not get that in 2 years,
right.
but be patient with yourself. And just have that vision. People have vision boards. People have all, they meditate, they take yoga, they walk, they bike, they
I
box,
love it.
they fight with their husbands or loved ones. But just keep in mind that it is
Yes,
your life, and you
yes,
do have the opportunity to curate the life that you want to lead. And it's not always going to be so easy. No one's life is easy, no matter how many Instagram and TikTok posts we see of people looking like, for the most part, that they're having a
right,
much better day than you're having. Everything is
right,
so glorious. It's so good. They look good. And you're like, wow, look at me. I look terrible. But that's our tendency, right? Is always comparing ourselves to others. And I say,
right.
compare yourself to yourself. What
Love
do
it.
you want? It's not about what someone else has. What do you want? And how do you live your best life? And just take charge of that life. Don't allow anyone to take charge of your life. It is yours. You own it. And it's up to you to make it what you want it to be. Because once you're your best self, everyone around you embraces that because they get that glow, right? They get that afterglow. They're like, let's help
Absolutely.
her. She said she wanted to do, let's help her get that done because that's going to be
Mhm.
best for me. And ultimately, we're all selfish and we're all looking for what's best for us. Ultimately.
Absolutely.
Ultimately.
I love that. And as you said, we get, and I just, I'll close with this, we get one opportunity. I think sometimes that we are not as intentionally thinking about the clock is ticking, not necessarily for aging, but just for the aspect
Yeah,
we
but the
have to
clock is
move forward.
ticking and nothing's
Yeah, it is
promised.
ticking. Nothing's
Nothing's
promised.
promised. I come
Right.
from New Orleans where they say, let the good times roll, les bon temps roulés, and
Hmm.
that's part of that tradition down there. People don't let, as my mother say, let grass grow under their feet. They're constantly moving.
Right. Well, this was an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you being here with so much sincerity, and
Well,
I'm
thank
so
you for
glad we made
having
this
me.
happen. Yeah, it was
And
great,
good
and
luck with
just
your
to
podcast.
thank you so much. And I'm so happy
Yes.
that again, Fashion Fair is moving forward, and I'm just excited to see what's ahead, even beyond what we talked about here today with all of the
All right,
initiatives
girl,
that you shared.
15% in your bag, 15% in your cosmetics bag.
What you say? Said it again.
15% in your cosmetics bag from black owned companies.
Okay, I heard you.
Yes, yes. You got to you
Gonna
got
be
to move
intentional
over to
about
the
those
black
dollars.
side. Move
That's
over to the
right.
black side.
Y'all heard it from Desiree first. We got to be intentional about those dollars, right? So thank you so much,
Yes.
Desiree, again for being here. It was my pleasure, and I just wish you an amazing rest of February, and of course, we'll see you live here in March.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Okay, great day. Okay, take care.